Senator Tom Cotton joins us, senator from Arkansas. Good morning, Senator. Welcome.
Good morning, Hugh. Thanks for having me on again.
I would like to play for you an exchange I just had with Ambassador Nikki Haley. Roll the tape. Do you believe the president should resign?
Yes, I do. And I think the Democrat Party knows that.
Senator Cotton, do you agree with Ambassador Haley and me that the president should resign?
Hugh, on this one, I think I have to disagree. Not just the president's resignation or the cabinet invoking the 25th Amendment or the Congress impeaching him, because you know what happens if Joe Biden resigns and who we're stuck with. That is, if there ever was a case of getting out of the frying pan and going into the fire, substituting Kamala Harris for Joe Biden might be the case.
I asked her about that. She's at least mentally competent, Senator.
Well, maybe.
Her judgment isn't very good, but she can remember what people tell her.
Hugh, just if I may offer a few observations, what's driving this obviously is the report last week from the special counsel that I think called the president a well-meaning elderly man with a failing memory. He couldn't even remember what years he was vice president. I mean, that's not Hugh. That's not asking someone like what year they took algebra in high school. I mean, when being elected to vice president is a pretty significant event.
1970.
Yeah.
All right. So I know when I took algebra in high school, so I know that.
Better than I did.
Okay.
But it makes it clear, too, that this is not just a problem now. The special counsel, and remember, what's a confidential report? He did not disclose this. He is obligated by law to file a confidential report to the Attorney General and explain his reasoning. This was Merrick Garland who released it to do away with that criticism of Mr. Hur. But he had to explain why he didn't recommend charges against President Biden when he leaves office, because all of the elements of the statute are there. And people have focused in part on the so-called affirmative defense that Joe Biden could offer, which is basically just that he's a well-meaning elderly man and everybody feels bad for him in 2025 or sometime later when he's out of office, when he's facing charges. It wasn't just that, Hugh. It was in 2017 when he was a private citizen, when he was working on his memoirs, that he had these memory failures as well. So it's not just that he would be a sympathetic defendant, it's that the special counsel might not be able to establish the intent element of the law because as far back as 2017, Joe Biden might not have been mentally competent to meet that intent standard. So the issue here, Hugh, is not that Joe Biden is running for president again. The issue is that he ran for president in the first time, and then he inflicted Kamala Harris on the nation as the vice president. I believe, as I have from the day he picked her, as 25th Amendment insurance. That is on him and those close around him who pushed him to do this for years. And unfortunately, I think that the country is stuck one way or the other with Joe Biden or Kamala Harris for another 11 months. The way to solve this problem is to elect Donald Trump.
Now, we will have to disagree on that because I think she can remember her birthday. But let's move on. I think we also disagree. I think you voted against the Senate aid package of $95 billion for Israel, Taiwan, and Ukraine, and our defense industrial base. Why did you vote against it? Because I would have voted for it.
I did, Hugh, and I understand your view, and I understand the views of 20 or 22 of my Republican colleagues as well. As I've said from the beginning, I supported all the priorities we worked on from last fall: securing our border, aiding Ukraine, aiding Israel, helping protect Taiwan from a Chinese attack. However, we did say for many months to the people who elected us to address their highest priorities and protect their interests that we were going to pass the aid parts of this bill in return for the Democrats being willing to protect our border. We undertook a negotiation led by James Lankford, a good man who worked hard with a bunch of stubborn Democrats, to see what the Democrats were willing to do on the border. We now know the answer to that is not very much. You yourself last week said the border package that came out of those negotiations was unsatisfactory. I agree with that point, as did all but 4 Republicans. That doesn't change the fact that we still need to take action to force the hand of a stubborn, recalcitrant president and his party who's more invested in open borders than they are in securing our border, for that matter, helping our allies overseas.
Now, you were a member of the House, Senator. You know the way the House works. There's going to be a discharge petition. Would it be better for Speaker Johnson to take up the Senate bill and amend it to provide for the border wall and those provisions that serious people about the border approve of, and then send that back to the Senate?
Well, Hugh, what I think has to happen is what happened last summer in the debt ceiling. This is the point Senator McConnell made about the debt ceiling. The way to get a compromise that can pass into law is to have the Speaker of the House and the President negotiate directly with each other. That's what needs to happen here. And the President has to recognize that if he wants to pass this aid into law, he's going to have to stop the abuses he's done at the border, especially on asylum and parole. I do want to point out to you, though, in addition to missing anything about serious border security from the bill also had about $19 billion in non-military aid. That's about 20% of the total. That's $7.9 billion to budgetary support for Ukraine, which may be necessary. I don't think the United States should pick up the tab for that. It's $9.2 billion in humanitarian aid to Ukraine and the conflicts in Israel, as it's called, and something called other vulnerable populations and communities. We have no idea how that's going to break down. It may end up going almost entirely to Gaza. That means it's almost certainly going to be misused by Hamas. There are some guardrails in the bill. I just don't think they're adequate because Hamas doesn't divert aid or steal aid or commandeer aid. Hamas accepts aid. Hamas and its cronies are the governing authority in Gaza. So I don't think we should be funding that as well. We didn't give humanitarian aid to Germany and Japan in the middle of World War II. And there's other stuff in there, too, like $1.6 billion to post-Soviet states for things like climate change resiliency and green energy, or $481 million to a bunch of left-wing globalist NGOs who are trying to accelerate more migration as opposed to stop it. So putting aside the fact that it didn't have any border security measures in it, it also had about $19 billion of spending that I don't think was necessary. That would be better not spend at all, or better spend on things like 3 new submarines or 170 new stealth fighters or more than 5,000 precision strike missiles.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I hope the president is willing and able to negotiate. But if he isn't, I hope the discharge petition passes. Senator Cotton, I've got to play the rest of the Haley interview. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I appreciate it. We'll talk again next week.